woman at the hem of Jesus' garment. Healing, I tell you. He will do it. Keep going. Is it possible that I can click? No. Keep going. So that's what I just discussed about the history. There was so much more, but it didn't happen again until the early 1900s, late 1800s, that they discovered that we needed separate care. So it's a very paternalistic medical system. Now, as far as hormonal dysfunction is concerned, you know what, I'm gonna stay here. Thank you. Go ahead, you can click. Hormones. If I talk about hormones, they come from the pituitary gland down from your body. I don't want to get too technical. Go ahead and click. So that's dysmenorrhea I'm going to talk about. Keep going. Just keep clicking. Click, 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 click until I tell you to stop. Now, dysmenorrhea, that's good. Stop there. It's painful menstruation. Basically, that's what I'm going to tell you. It manifests in the pelvis, and it's with the onset of your menses, when your period starts. There's primary and then there's secondary. Click again, because it's one more. And it's associated with when we ovulate or when our eggs are released from the ovaries. Go ahead. Click again. About 45 to 93% of women of reproductive age actually are affected. And those that are adolescent are the ones that are most affected. It causes you to miss school, causes you to miss work. Karen was gone 2 days out of the month from school. Yes, go ahead and click. Thank you. Secondary dysmenorrhea was the primary cause. Is actually, and that's why it's called secondary, because there's another causative factor, which would be endometriosis, scarring from other surgeries, you know, such as maybe you had, let's say your bowel, something was going on with your bowel, any type of abdominal surgery could cause pelvic scarring, okay? Or uterine fibroids could cause you to have dysmenorrhea, because there's scarring in that region. Okay? Go ahead and click. Oh, look at the Lord. How many people remember this thing here? They gave you a hot water bottle and said, go for it. Right? The mental health effects can cause situational depression, anxiety, especially because, remember I told you adolescents are the first age group that is affected. I was 11 rather, when I first started. Can you imagine me dealing with some roaring cramps? So I was like, what is going on? I'm scared. Anxiety. Increase with the severity of pain of dysmenorrhea in all age groups, but that first group, it increases in the adolescent population. So those are the mental health issues that we deal with as women, but imagine the young person having to deal with it. Now, treatment modalities or how we treat it range from oral contraceptives. So sometimes the doctor or the OB/GYN doctor would put you on the pill, basically, to modulate and take away the flow. Because most of the time when you have dysmenorrhea, it's coupled by a heavy flow, clots, and a lot of other things that go along with it. So also, it would give you what are called prostaglandin inhibitors, and if I tried to explain that to you, we'd be here all day. But prostaglandins cause your uterus to contract, basically. A diet low in fat, regular exercise, heat, and massage are other complementary treatments. The next disorder is dysfunctional uterine bleeding. Now, it's called DUB, It's an abnormal uterine bleeding resulting from a disturbance in the menstrual cycle. Now, mostly it's caused when you don't ovulate. Now, it could be either heavy bleeding, no bleeding. 8 minutes? Okay, thanks. Heavy bleeding, no bleeding. You can get passage of clot, or you just don't come on, you don't come on for 2 months, something similar to that. Let me get to the treatments. There are many types of DUB, and they're all listed here. How many of you get to the aisle, or you used to go to the aisle and it looked like that? Like, what in the world? What should I choose? I'm doing that for my daughter right now. Mental health issues and treatments for DUB. The literature basically shows it's basically fear, because you're like, why am I not menstruating? Or why am I bleeding for a year, basically? And sometimes it can go that long. Basically what they do is similar to dysmenorrhea. They'll put you on hormones. They put you on a cyclic low-dose pill, the pill, if I'm going to just make it easy. And there's another hormone that they use, progestin. In cases when the cause is unknown, they use the prostaglandin inhibitors again to prevent blood loss, because the blood loss can be huge. Polycystic ovarian syndrome. Oh, this is a booger here. The nature is very complex. Although the female anatomy, hormone secretory system, because remember I told you it starts in the brain from the pituitary gland. There is an excess amount of androgens. Androgens are really common to man. So when the female has an overload of these androgens, then they start getting masculine characteristics. So now your body is now starting to produce things that are not common to women, and then you start getting cysts also, and then it makes it very different to get pregnant. You get insulin resistance, so many other things. But the thing about it is that the biggest thing is you start missing your period. You're not ovulating. 15% of women with PCOS are also obese. It's just so many things. But the biggest thing is hair in eye places, infertility, dysfunctional bleeding, or you don't get a period. Those are major things. Mental health issues. The effects of PCOS are largely associated with infertility, and that's what drives the women to depression. Depression is the behavioral dimension associated with this. Eating disorders and anxiety. Those are really the hard ones. PMS and premenstrual dysphoric disorder are separate, but I lump them together. It's a cyclic reoccurrence of the phase of menstruation when ovulation occurs, causing symptoms 5 days before. So PMS, you'll get the symptoms before. PMDD, or premenstrual dysphoric disorder, happens during or right in, okay? Let's talk about menopause, Lord Jesus. It's a normal development of women, okay? So it's not a lot you can do about it. It's gonna happen. Treatments, I just thought this was really funny. We got menopause, standing and wanting to jump in the water and swim towards Alaska to get cooled off. Mental health issues, of course, increasing frustration, anxiety, because your body is changing. Your body is changing. There's really nothing you can do about it. Treatments, adequate sleep, regular exercise, because you're getting also your urinary system is doing some funky stuff, because you're starting to leak when you laugh. Just all kinds of interesting things are happening because your body is changing. I'm skipping a whole lot, and I assure you, you can definitely have this if you need it. Real quick, I want to skip to the end. Impaired fertility is a really big one. Women that rely, really, that's the hallmark of being a woman, is having a baby. I mean, that's one of the things that society puts on us, is make a woman, is that you have to have children. And that may not be our desire, but that's what they put on us. So when a woman can't have a baby, the mental health issues, and I'm going to skip to them because, like I said, you can have this if you want it. The psychological causes, oh my gosh, they're usually overlooked. And the stress of it makes treatment difficult. Emotions that the woman goes through: shock, grief, depression, anger, frustration, definitely self-esteem and self-confidence issues. So it's really hard. Now, the one I wanted to get to is postpartum depression and postpartum dysphoria. Jesus. It's different from baby blues, because women do have baby blues after having a baby, and it doesn't last. But postpartum depression lasts. Symptoms range from loss of appetite, eating too much, intense irritability, anger, insomnia, sleeping too much, overwhelming fatigue. So those are things that stay. So antidepressant therapy, psychotherapy is for postpartum dysphoria, but just antidepressant therapy and counseling is for postpartum depression. Now, I just want to real briefly tell you about a story that hit home for me. When I was working at Cook County, there was a urologist, and his wife had postpartum dysphoric disorder. And they had been trying to have a baby for about 5 years. And this is Melanie Stokes. And they were elated at the birth of their baby, Sky. Probably about 4 months into her birth, she had been admitted 3 times to Lutheran General, put on several antidepressants because they thought she had postpartum depression. But she had postpartum dysphoric disorder, which is very different. Psychotherapy is needed. And sometimes the person has to stay in the hospital, not be admitted, let go, admitted, let go. You really have to work on it. She ended her life on a Thursday in 2011, jumping from a 12th floor window, and left her child and her husband without a mother and without a wife. So it is imperative that we watch one for another. I just wanted to leave you as Christian women what scriptures are our mainstays. Jeremiah 29:11, we know that well. Psalms 139:14, 1 Corinthians 10:13, 2 Corinthians, especially 10:3, thank you so much, 10:3 through 6. Warfare is needed. Thank you so much for your attention.
All right, let's give her a hand, you guys. Amen. Amen. So you see that we definitely need this. We definitely need this. Ladies, we need to start battling for our mind. Okay? We all in here have menstrual cycles. We're mothers, we're wives. You know, so we need to fight the devil with the word of God, because imagine if your body is going through all of this, of course, it's going to affect your mental cycle, right? Amen. So next we're going to bring up our educator, Stephanie Gage, and Stephanie is trained in youth mental health first aid. So give her a hand as she comes.
Good morning, and definitely praise the Lord. My name is Stephanie Gage, as she shared. I am a certified public school educator. Thank you. We'll switch. When I shared this information, I was a 4th grade teacher. Since then, God has appointed me to be an assistant principal at a middle school. When I never wanted to be an educator. I wanted to be a corporate attorney because I was like, that's where I am. But God said no. So he put me in education. And I was like, God, I didn't even really care for children that much. But then I got there and I had my own child, and he was like, push, push. And he started revealing, like, this is your assignment. He put me in a neighborhood that was very racist. They had never hired a black educator before, even though they had Hispanic and black children there. This was the year 2000, right here in western suburbs of Chicago. So I came in and I said, God, you put me here? You want me to be here? And he said yes. So 20 years later, I am one of the assistant principals at their middle school. And I understand my journey. I understand my task that he has given to me. And yes, I'm a public school educator, but you better believe that those parents and those children know that I'm a believer. So I come with a whole different perspective. I had parents saying when they first got there, I want my kid removed out of your class because you're black. And she told me every single negative stereotype that she had ever heard of for black people. And I said, if you would leave your child in this room, I will guarantee you that they will get a different type of education. By the end of the year, this student's grandparents were coming in, serving at my parties. And they said, you sit back, you relax, we got this. So God has just, he opens doors, and I'm shaking, I'm trembling because he still amazes me. He amazes me. So I come from Apostolic Faith Church under the leadership of Bishop Horace Smith. I come as a believer, come as a speaker, but I'm trained in youth mental health first aid, but I'm going to just share some things with you about mental health. In general, nearly 1 in 5 adults that we have in our country, they live with a mental illness. In 2016, an estimated 10.4 million adults, they had been diagnosed with mental illnesses. What does mental illness look like to us? It can be depression. It can be anxiety. Depression, anxiety. I have them. I deal with them. It can look like substance abuse. All right? We have to be more aware with our children, so I'm going to focus on our children. I know this is about women, but us as mothers, us as aunts, as grandmothers, that we identify with our youth. So that's where my studies are going to come from. 1 in 5 teens and young adults live with a mental health condition. Half of them have developed by the age of 14, and 3/4 of them by the age of 24. They're not going to come to you and say, I have a mental illness. They're not saying that to us. All right? 1 in 5 American children between the ages of 3 and 17, that means about 15 million people, they have a diagnosable mental, emotional, or behavior disorder in any given year. Only about 20% of these children are ever diagnosed or receive treatment. 80%, or about 12 million, they are not receiving treatment. Alrighty? Depression. And sometimes we look at kids and we think, well, what's wrong with them? I hear educators saying that all the time. What's wrong with this kid? And I'm like, you don't know. You don't know. This week alone, we had to have 2 police officers sent out to 2 different homes because kids had said, I'm killing myself, and they did not show up at school. So by God's grace, because we started praying. I have a principal who's a believer, and we prayed, and we said, not today, not this child. You won't take this child. By God's grace, those children, we now know them, we have watched them, and now I'm like, God's like, whoosh, that's your assignment. You watch them. So when that happens now, what I'm doing is I print out their schedule, I print out their information sheet, and I'm like, you better believe I'm all up in your business. I'm there. So I understand my assignment, God. I understand that you're using me as a vessel to reach your children. Not under my watch will we lose yet another child to die by suicide. Alrighty, depression. In 2016, an estimated 2.2 million adolescents between the ages of 12 and 17, they had one major depressive episode with severe impairment. And we might think, like, what does it look like? What does it look like for a kid to be depressed? They start isolating themselves. They stop wanting to do things with their friends. No more sports. They don't want to have fun. we have to watch out for them because the signs are there, but sometimes we don't see them. 64.1% of youth with major depression don't get any kind of mental health treatment. Here's what I hear teachers say. That kid is crazy. Don't worry about him. They're never going to amount to anything. And I'm going through the roof. So, because I shared with my superintendent the other day, I said, I'm trained in youth mental health first aid. That may not mean anything because we have people who have their doctorates and so, whatever. And I said, that's great. But do we know what to do with children? How do we recognize the signs of what a mental illness or disorder looks like in a child? So we are changing our path, and we now are seeing our kids and looking at them with a different lens and saying, hey, we got to watch this kid. We have to watch out for them. There's something that's there. I see it more in our females because our boys, it's hidden a little bit more. But the girls, they show you outward signs more so. It may also look like anxiety. We have a lot of kids who get nervous. They get worked up really easily. Anxiety disorders affect about 1 in 8 children. Last year I had 30 kids in my classroom. Probably about 4 of them actually had anxiety disorders that had not been diagnosed, but with this training I saw it. And I'm not properly trained, or I'm not certified to where I can share that with a parent, but I would say, hey, when you go to your physician, ask these questions. Make sure you talk to them about this. Researchers found that about 20% increase in diagnosis of anxiety between the ages of 6 and 17 between the years 2007 and 2012. Nearly 1/3 of all adolescents between 13 and 18 will experience an anxiety disorder during their lifetime. I was one of those kids, but we didn't know it. My parents didn't know it. We were believers. And you know what people would say to us? Girl, just pray about it. And I was that kid that I was worked up at 5. At 5, I was like, and my parents would just say, she just has so much energy. So what did my father do? He put me in all types of sports. He put me in activities, and they just tried to burn my energy out. But I was still suffering from anxiety disorders. I have 3 siblings, and I slept in a room by myself so I could experience my disorders by myself. I'd go in my room and hide, and they always thought I was playing. Sometimes I was in the corner shuddering because I did not know what to do. And they said, pray. So I'm Pentecostal. What I do, I prayed. God, take this away from me. I don't know how to, and dealing with those things. But as an adult, still deal with it. Now it's called menopause. But I said to my doctor, she said, there's something going on. I said, yeah, it is. And I said I didn't want to be on any kind of medication, but eventually I had to go on some. We've worked myself off of it because now I see those triggers and I'm like, not today, Satan. You are not getting that power over me today, but I've gotten the treatment. Think about the children, the adults, the women who don't. And as women, what do? We push our stuff aside because we're taking care of our husbands, our children, our jobs, our parents. I'm a sandwich generation kid. I have senior parents, so I'm taking care of them, taking care of my daughter, taking care of everybody else. I wasn't taking care of Stephanie. And my daughter, who is a clinical psychology student, one day she said, Mom, your anxiety orders are internal. But she said they brew up every Sunday morning when it's time for me to come and worship. Devil is busy on Sunday mornings. He would have me on Sunday mornings in my room crying because I was like, I can't go to church. I'm a Sunday school secretary. I'm the Christian ed secretary, rather. So I have a pretty significant role on Sunday mornings. I'm needed. And the devil every Sunday morning be like, not today. You're not going. You're not going. And sometimes I would get to church and they could tell, like, she had another one today. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, but I'm here. I'm here among my people. My pastor is a physician. He saw it. He could see it. And he would just come up to me sometimes and just pray scriptures, and I was like, why is he doing this to me? He saw it. He could see it. Sometimes our substance abuse in our children, 5.13% of American youth, they have a substance or alcohol problem. And I know I'm mindful of my time, I'm going to be obedient, but we had a kid the other day whose mom passed away last year. He's an 8th grader. This kid has had so much trouble. I'd never met him before. This is my first year at the middle school. And he was across the street from the school smoking weed. He said, but I wasn't on your property, so nothing is wrong. What did we do? We suspended him for 3 days. So I said to the administrator, I said, now he has 3 days to smoke weed. I said, so what do we do with him when he comes back? And all that stuff is brewing in his system. So he got into trouble the other day, and he walked out of the class, and he came into my office, and he said, can I sit with you? I said, you better believe you can. This boy has clothes stacked in my office because that's like, you are going to be mine. If I could take you home and I could raise you, I would. He said his 22-year-old sister has told him, you're a throwaway, nobody wants you, nobody cares about you. This is what he is believing, but we're like, no, not today. What else might it look like? It might look like eating disorders. A couple of years ago, I had a bunch of fourth graders who put a girl on a diet. They told her she was too fat. She passed out, and I was like, what happened? And she said, they told me I was too fat, so I haven't been eating. She had eaten for days. So 1 or 2 of every 100 students will experience an eating disorder. We've seen it. 20 million women and 10 million men have a clinically significant eating disorder at some point in their lives. I'm going to jump back to suicide. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death in young people between the ages of 10 and 24, resulting in about 4,600 lives lost in the U.S. every year. This is where the program that I work for, where they come in. And we shared with Vanjie, what can we do? What does it look like when you're in a crisis? So this is an 8-hour training session that takes place. And it is for anybody who works with youth. There's also an adult portion of it, not yet certified, but I will be. Not yet teen certified, but I will be. So that when we see it in each other and our friends and our siblings and our children and my dad, that I can say, hey, hang on a second. We have some things that we need to work on for you. And we have this action plan that is called ALGAE. And what does ALGAE look like? Sorry, let me grab my notes. We have to actually, if we think somebody's at the brink of suicide, at the brink of hurting themselves, we have to say, hey, are you trying to harm yourself? Are you trying to hurt yourself? We have to be bold enough to ask them that question and not worry about hurting feelings because we don't want the next day to be like, God, I should have said something. And I will ask kids, do you have a plan? And sometimes I get a no. I'm like, okay, cool. But when I get a yes, I'm like, cool, here we go. Because when they have a plan, that means they've thought it out. We want to listen non-judgmentally. If you think somebody's at the brink of suicide, just listen to them. Don't tell them, and one day when I was little, they don't need to hear that. Just listen. Don't judge them. Don't tell them to pray to God. Yes, in our mind, we are saying pray to God. But right now, that's not what they're hearing. We're going to be praying. Send a text message to your prayer warriors. I got this soul, we need to start praying. We're going to bombard heaven's gates because this one is not leaving here. Not this way. We also have to give them reassurance and information. We want to make sure that we encourage appropriate professional help. I am a trained mental health first aider. That's it. I have no medical experience. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm a mother with a heart and a believer, and that's all I can say to them is like, hey, you know what? I am not the correct person, but I can guide you, and I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to walk with you. I'm not going to leave you. If you're thinking about suicide, I'm going to be right here by your side, and we're going to get you some help. Then we also want to, the last thing in our action plan that we do for the organization, we encourage self-help and other support strategies. Sometimes when kids tell me, no, Ms. Gage, I don't have a plan. Okay, honey, let's do this. We can do these things to help you so that when you feel those trigger moves, you make sure that you do not go that far. When you feel that urge to leave this earth, come talk to me. I've given kids my personal cell number. If in the middle of the night you feel like this is it, I can't take no more, you call Miss Gage, because I will answer my phone, and if I have to drive and come and get you, I will do it. We are commissioned by God to be our brother and our sister's keeper. We have to catch our young people. They're hearing, they're seeing way too much. So I know we can do it. I applaud Wheaton Christian Center, Aurora, for having this day, for talking about mental health, because in black churches especially, we don't do it. It's taboo. So thank you for being front runners and getting us out there.
Yeah. All right. Praise God. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. All right. And so next we have Dr. Joy Singh, and Dr. Joy Singh is a psychotherapist. And so put your hands together and let's thank God as she comes to the podium. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Joy Singh. I'm a psychotherapist and the owner of AMI Counseling in Naperville, and I am very happy and honored to be here among so many great minds, both on the panel and in the audience, and express something that not everyone really wants to discuss, okay? It's kind of that 5-letter word, anger. And the reason that I want to talk about it is because anger gets a really bad rap. Okay, I work with a lot of the students that Miss Stephanie works with. I work with a lot of the clients that Miss Karen has dealt with, and anger sometimes is kind of that primal, basic underlying emotion that gets lashed out because of how we've been socialized. Now, as women, we have been socialized to hold it in and stuff it in, because think of all the bad names that we have for women who speak their truth, who have a $5 reaction to a nickel situation, right? And all the negative names that they're called, okay? And think of all the negative names that men are called when they have a breakdown and cry, or when they actually want to talk about their emotions. They're called such negative names. They are shunned almost. So we're going to break some of that today. We're going to talk about it and break some of that. So anger, did that not click? Oh, okay. There he is. I like this movie because it has joy in it. But this is Inside Out. And how many of us here have felt anger? Hello. My name is Joy. I'm an angry person, or I can be. So that's me right there. That's me. We feel anger on a personal level. Absolutely. Interpersonally, with our spouses, our partners, our kids, people that we work with just in the course of a day. But we also experience it on a global scale. Think about everything that's been going on in the world today. That makes us really, really angry. But what we don't really think about is that anger gets a lot of credit for change and movement and tolerance and rights. Okay? If we didn't have anger, we wouldn't have a lot of rights. We would be living in a world that's based off of fear, intolerance, injustice. And you might say, oh, well, aren't we already living in that right now? But imagine, look at all the movements that have happened because someone got angry. Okay, up here I have Me Too. We have rights, we have even the Humane Society, votes for women. We, as women, we weren't allowed to vote. And apparently our vote really, really, really matters. So if there was no passion, right, no anger, we wouldn't have all of these movements. In fact, we wouldn't even have a United States. To quote Hamilton, the epic Broadway musical, Lin-Manuel Miranda states in his in one of his songs that he's written, he says, this is not, without anger, there would be no moment or movement. And so why is anger so complicated? It's kind of like that math/maze problem up there. It's like anyone who knits or sews, it's when this yarn gets tangled. Why is it so? It's so complicated, so confusing, because we see it. How many of us see it as a problem? Anger is a problem. Ooh, we need to manage our anger. We need to solve our anger. Okay, but we're not taught how to manifest it in a positive way. Okay, it's complicated because it can be destructive, but it can be constructive. Yes. And not everyone realizes that. It can be so constructive. Sorry. Catch up. So today, I want to really focus on how anger manifests in the brain. So I'm going to get a little bit technical. How men and women express anger differently because that's how we've been socialized. And how anger has been helpful for the survival of our human race. Okay, not that race. Okay, not that one either. So you see, it was really, really hard for me to find a picture of the human race. Those shoes are from an artist named Farrell who came out with, I like his concept. I'm not sure if I want to spend the money for the shoes because I'm Indian and I'm cheap. So, all right, the brain. So I talk about the brain here. We have a picture with the three important parts that I'm going to focus on. Obviously, the brain is very, very complex. It's a mass of 3 pounds of neurons and all this other smart stuff that I don't know. But the amygdala, which is part of our limbic system, okay, is responsible for emotion and memory. It is our animal or mammalian brain. The prefrontal cortex, this little part right here in the front of our brain, that's responsible for everything that makes us human. It makes us different from other mammals. The ability to walk upright, the ability to language, power of speech, the ability to focus and concentrate. Think about the big picture. And the ability to regulate our emotions. So, as you can see, the amygdala is what we call our fight, flight, freeze center. That is all basic animal instincts. As humans, we are hardwired to save ourselves through fight, flight, freeze. So the amygdala was designed to keep us and our caveman ancestors alive. When presented with a threat, whether it be a saber-toothed tiger, another tribe coming to either steal our women or steal our food, we would go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And our brains have evolved, but not as much as we would think that they did. So have we evolved or just advanced? Well, everyone in here can say, well, Joy, obviously we've advanced. I mean, come on, we have Facebook and YouTube and Tinder. But our brain is still hardwired to react to a threat, an interpretation of a threat, the same way our caveman ancestors did. And so it's still set up, our brain is still set up to be our body's central processing unit, okay? And to control every aspect from breathing to moving, walking, and also what memories we're going to keep and where, and how we do ourselves in the world. So basically, we're just cavemen with smartphones. So I'm going to, the example I want to use is, how many of you guys have notifications set up on your phone? Okay, how many of those notifications give you anxiety? I hear a ding and I'm like, ugh. So my phone is usually always on Do Not Disturb, or airplane mode, or off, or lost. I like that one, lost. In my car. Because, man, when we get that ding of an email, it could be something positive, or it could be something negative. But remember, the way our brain works, our brain is wired. Okay, it's not looking at positive or negative. It's not judging it. It's just what it is. Our brain sends out about 30 plus stress hormones. So that's like taking, I call it the dirty 30 cocktail. Okay, so our brain sends out, is sending out 30 plus stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, 28 more that I don't know the names of. We feel it physically, okay? This is why a lot of us have anxiety, because anxiety makes sense when we are presented with a threat, okay? We get dry mouth, numbness in our fingers and toes, and this is all, when we go back to our ancestors, this makes sense. Numbness in fingers and toes. Why do we have that? It's because the brain is sending out, blood to our extremities so that we can be lighter on our feet. We get jelly legs because we got to run or fight. Upset stomach because we got to get rid of whatever's in there so we're lighter on our feet. Dizzy or lightheaded because now our blood is rushing. And we can actually push our bodies to do what we normally cannot do, like pick up cars and trucks and so forth when we're in that state of mind. So, let's go ahead and flip our lid. And I wanted to focus on this, so everybody raise a hand. Okay. Daniel Siegel, psychiatric professor at UCLA, came up with this to explain to kids how anger works and how our emotions work. So he says that this part right here, this is our brainstem. Now everybody take their thumb and go like this. That is our amygdala. Okay. That's the fight, flight, that's the animal brain. Now if we take these 4 fingers and we cross them over, that's our prefrontal cortex. This is all executive functioning. But guess what? They live in 2 separate parts of the brain and they don't talk to each other. And it's all biologically necessary, right? So when amygdala turns on, boom, what happens? We flip our lid. And this guy goes offline. So how can we talk to students whose lids are flipped? How can we talk to women or men, right? That's why I always smile when people say, oh my God, okay, this person had a $5 reaction nickel situation. They're crazy. And I go, no, I'm sorry, I'm the craziest one here. So I got it down. But it says my prefrontal cortex is the wise leader. This is the wise leader. But when I flip my lid, my amygdala does the talking. It drives my bus. And I can't make my best response because I'm coming out animal. I'm going to come fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, I also like to call it the Hulk brain versus Bruce Banner. Real quick. I know I'm running out of time here. So anger is not the first emotion. We do know that there is a trigger or something that provokes our anger, and those things have to be seen as unpleasant, unfair, goal-blocking, avoidable, and powerless. So the prescription for anger is the interpretation flips our lid. Okay, it's usually anxiety-based, it's fear. What is fear? F-E-A-R, false evidence, ain't real. Poor coping and socialization. So now, anger can go wrong. Everyone's like, okay, well, those are, okay, great, yeah, but when does anger go wrong? Is this telling me to relax, helps me forget about my stress and focus on my anger issues? So now that's anger management. A lot of people, I work with victims of domestic violence. I'm a trauma-informed psychotherapist, so I see a lot of trauma, a lot of violence, a lot of abuse. And a lot of people ask me, well, Joy, how do I know that this person just doesn't have an anger management issue? And I said, well, have the police been involved? Are they getting fired from jobs? This, that, and the third. Because if it's anger management, it's expressed towards anyone, anywhere, anytime. The world is at risk for their wrath. Okay? And so partners and family are usually not the first target. But it is in domestic violence. Okay? Domestic violence is different from anger management. Because domestic violence, if you look at the definition, it's a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to obtain or maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. So notice I say the word pattern. How many of us have had a bad day and went off? Yeah. Okay, is it a pattern? Probably not. Okay, so no, we're not abusers. We can take a, whew, thank God, thank God. So, let's see. Okay, so domestic violence or intimate partner violence, real quick, or intimate partner violence abuse. Anger is directed towards the partner, children, parents, other family, and there is a sense of entitlement. The abuser makes the choice. The behavior is learned or modeled. And these are the 6 categories of abuse. Now, I have a handout that I gave everyone about the spectrum between healthy and unhealthy behaviors, so please look at that. Now, gender roles. Men are socialized to be angry and show the anger as the first emotion. They're not taught to experience or express other emotions. You ask a guy how they feel, I'm fine. Tells me nothing. No, seriously, how do you feel? I'm okay. I'm all right. Tells me nothing. You know, they live in an emotional box. So I kind of feel sorry for them, right? We kind of feel sorry for some men that are not in touch with their feelings. Women are socialized to show any emotion other than anger. You know, we got to be the good girl. Okay, we're called bad names when having the $5 reaction nickel situation. We're learned to stuff, right? Keep it inside. We may end up in power and control relationships because of this. But anger can be motivating, and the way that a lot of women do make changes is that when we experience anger for others, like our kids, right? Think of a woman who's in a domestic violence partnership. You can say anything to me. You mess with my kids, it's on. So, but anyway, so I guess that's my time. And like I said, for women, we need to be able to let ourselves know that anger is telling us when something is wrong. Okay, it's not always a negative. It's just saying, it's a little red flag, it's a pop-up. You know, it's a little notification, ding, ding, something is wrong, let's pay attention to it. But thank you so much again for having me here.
Amen. All right, so Dr. Brown has not made it back, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. So at this time, if you have any questions that you would like to ask the doctors, this is your time to ask whatever questions you would like. We have specialists here to answer your questions and to help you. So if you have a question, now is your time.
You were talking about the menopause, and you were saying what the best thing was to do. Can you tell me that again?
There are a lot of complementary treatments. Yes, ma'am. Hormone replacement therapy was the mindset, but there are a lot of different non-medicinal treatments, black cohosh, soy, St. John's wort are some of the natural things you can do. Okay?
And you said with exercising it's good.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Like I said, I can easily email my presentation to you because there are a lot of herbal and natural treatments that you can take. But the one thing that I'm going to caution you is make sure that they don't interact with medications that you may be taking. That is the issue, and that's what I'm going to caution you.
A question for someone who suffers from postpartum depression. Is that an indicator that they may have trouble with depression later in life? Is there a genetic component to it?
There may be, if they've had any depression prior to, they run a greater risk of having postpartum depression. But postpartum depression is usually situational because it's hormonal in nature. But it stands to reason that they may have a depressive component because it's chemical and it's hormonal. Depression itself is chemical also. But situational depression is a whole nother animal. For instance, my father passed away. I had situational depression. I was depressed for a course of time. I did have to go on medication, but yeah, got through it.
I
have a question regarding the hormone imbalance. Is there a test that you can go and have taken to see what is causing what to be off?
Absolutely. They're going to draw female hormones, estradiol, estrogen, your follicle stimulating hormone. Those are all the tests that they're going to do. Progesterone levels. So they're going to look at all the female hormones.
So do you actually specifically ask for a hormone imbalance test, or is there a specific name for this?
Rest assured that once you reach the age you're perimenopausal, those levels are going to start to decline, because once you stop ovulating, they're going to decline. Yeah, so you may as well start looking at what you want to do to treat symptomatology. So when you start to have symptoms such as hot flashes, because I didn't get to talk to you guys about that, there are things that make them come on. You may be sensitive to caffeine, those type of things, high fatty foods, those types of things. So you have to be really careful about what you ingest.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Will that cause anxiety as well? Hold on.
It can. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, you wanted me to say it out loud. I was asking, does that cause anxiety as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Why are these women so opposed to hormone replacements?
Because if you have familial or family history of breast cancer or any type of family history of cancers, introducing estrogen into your body makes you predisposed to breast cancers or any type of other female cancers. Yeah.
Talk about the suicide chat on a little bit. Ms. Gates, when you're dealing with threatening, and I understand what you were saying, like you have a plan.
Right.
What is your chain of kind of order? And I'm kind of working with free support now, so that's something
So that's where the ALGE action plan is, ALGEE, that you would ask, do they have a plan? And when we've dealt with that before, in the meantime, I'm telling somebody else, like, call 911, so that they get a professional to come and help and assist. I'm asking, do they have a plan? I'm listening to their story to try to get them out. We've had instances where we know where people, in the particular training session, there's a young gentleman by the name of Kevin, and he had suicidal thoughts, and he was at a bridge, ready to jump. But a woman was, as he was like about to mount up onto the bridge, the woman was asking him, can you take my picture? He's about to mount up on the bridge, but she wanted her picture taken. He said if she had just said, are you okay? He said that probably would have prevented him. Now, he did not jump, but he said nobody was recognizing the symptoms. But because they're there, sometimes they're subtle, we don't see them. But also, we want to give them reassurance and let them know, hey, this is tough, like it's real. Don't deny it. We see it. We know you want to die by suicide. And that's another thing I'm going to interject really quickly. This training has taught me to say die by suicide and not say they committed suicide. When you commit, that's a crime. We don't want people to think that suicide is a crime. It is a mental illness that they're dealing with. We have to begin to treat mental illnesses the same way that we do any other illness. Change our language. People who have depression, anxiety, would rather not have it. I'm nervous sometimes at the thought of dating, because I know sometimes that anxiety can rise up, and I don't want it to scare somebody. Now, I've gotten mine under control, but I still know it's there. But we also wanted to get professional help. Although I'm a 20-year educator, I've seen a lot. I have a 26-year-old daughter. I'm not a professional. Medicine is not my thing. So I know, like, I'm snapping or I'm texting somebody else saying, hey, call 911 because we've got a situation on hand. We had a family friend who came over and told us he fell from the sky. So I said, okay. All right. So we knew at that moment he was having a mental health crisis. At that time, I was not trained, but I had enough common sense to call my sister and my daughter, who are both in the field of psychology, and I said, hey, this is not me. I need you. I ran inside and I called 911. And I said, we have a situation. We need some backup. We need support. Don't come in rushing with your guns out. But we just need you to be here in case something else pops off, because he had a luggage with him, so we didn't know what he had. But when you're telling me I fell from the sky, I know why God put me here, that's a mental health crisis right there happening in front of us. So for me, when that situation happened, when we are non-professionals, after I've done my task, I'm free to step back. It's best for me to step back so that I don't agitate that situation and push him where he doesn't need to go. And then giving them self-help, giving them, sharing with things with them. With young people, I say, like, do you practice yoga? It might seem crazy, like, what? But it's just, do you have calming techniques? And we have kids who come down and say, like, I now know my trigger buttons, so I now need to have equip them with tools so they can try to bring themselves down. Did I answer your question? Okay.
And I'm just trying to figure out the best way to word it. How do you, working with you,
Yes.
and how do you know the difference? Say, you could have situational depression.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in trouble, so I'm depressed. But how do you know when it's truly depression versus in young children manipulation?
That's what part of our training goes. So I gave you a brief synopsis of our 8-hour training. So yeah, it does, because it's like hormones. Like, I was taught 4th and 5th grade, and there were times they'd be up and down, and parents would say, I think my kid is depressed. And I'm like, they could be. But I said, but we also have to remember this is part of the hormones that are taking place, where the body is going up and down. I do take everything a kid says seriously, because some people will be like, oh, he just needs attention. How do you know? I'm like, how do we know they need attention? So I'm going to work with that kid. I'm going to put the social worker on it. We have 3 social workers, and we work them. Got a phone call. I'd rather you be tired than us to lose a kid. So I take every kid seriously, speak to the parents, and truthful with the parents. I had a kid last year who said, I think I want to die. My parents are getting divorced. It's my fault. I called Mom. Mom said, but I took her shopping. It's like, no, no. But by God's grace, that child emailed me yesterday saying that she needed a recommendation for a form of program she was in. So I think with our kids, whether or not they're playing, they need attention, we need to listen. Because if they're needing attention, then we have to change their language. When you say, like, I'm lonely, okay, that we can work with that. So I think just take them seriously.
I just wanted to ask about anxiety in children, especially in young children. When you said you were 5 when you were having some anxiety issues. You don't want to put a 5-year-old on medication.
No, by no means.
So how do you deal with that? And I also want to touch a little bit on separation anxiety that some of the kids feel. I'm a 4-year-old grandson who's still experiencing separation anxiety when he's not with his mom or grandma. So.
With anxiety, and when I was a kid and feeling, I was just a hyper kid, but I was always anxious. My parents didn't know anything about it, would not have put me on medication if they did know about it. We had to begin to talk about it and open up the conversation. Separation anxiety, I have a daughter, I'm a single parent. She still struggles with, why did he leave us? I can't answer that for you. And I've had to say to him, I don't badmouth him. I said, we will continue to pray for Dad, but Dad he couldn't stay. He didn't want to stay, and I don't know why. But with our young children, it looks like, anxiety looks like, Ms. Gage, my stomach hurts. Ms. Gage, I have a headache. Ms. Gage, and just kids who are crying, they don't want to come to school. And I said, that looks like anxiety, and I'm not a screamer. I don't scream at kids. But those are things kids were saying to parents, but a lot of it is, my stomach is hurting. I had a kid she went to the bathroom all the time, and I thought she had a urinary tract infection. It was anxiety. So that's what it could look like in kids. Did I answer you?
Yeah, and I also actually would like your take on it too, therapist. actually sometimes manifest as anger in children, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're 100% correct. So basically, remember, we flip our lid. And that's the fight, flight, freeze that comes from fear. And what is fear? Fear is anxiety. Anxiety in kids also is avoidance, right? Like you said, avoidance. And avoidance is something that is a negative reinforcer, and is one of the hardest reinforcers to break, because a negative reinforcer is the good feeling I get when I get away with not having to do something that makes me feel icky. So, those of you who have kids or working with kids who don't want to, that are doing school avoidance or not wanting to go to school, the parents will, for that day, they don't want to deal with it, they have to go to work, what have you. They say, okay, fine, stay home. Boom. You just really reinforce the avoidance. And so the way that we treat anxiety in kids is, like you said, at 5 years, do you want to put a child on medication? Not necessarily. So you treat them through relax. We have to turn Hulk brain off. We have to calm him down before we can get this guy back online, if that makes sense. So we have to calm down the Hulk. We need to get Bruce Banner back on so that we can, start talking to them logically. So anxiety is a preventative work. When you're in the throes of a panic attack, it's just time that's going to take care of it. A panic attack kind of creeps up in about 10 minutes, sits there for some time, and then slowly starts to come down unless you have another trigger. And then you can go right back up. So we must calm down the physiological side of that child. So we have to teach the child. It's like if we, say just go to school, that's like throwing them in a pool. They've never had any swimming lessons. So we have to get them to, it's, gradual, step by step by step. We have to really, really focus on calming them down physiologically. And we do that through relaxation, breathing, yoga, all of the mindfulness stuff. It sounds hokey. It does.
But it works, and we would do yoga in our classrooms, and it sounds crazy. I'm an advocate for yoga. I'm an advocate for it, but it is to help our kids identify what triggers me. And we have kids who say, like, I can feel my trigger rising. And I'm like, okay, come on. Because we want them to know, like, what it is. And then we have to have, what helps you to relax? How do we help you so that when you get that anxiety, because once you are and a panic attack is coming on, it's not backing up. It's coming. So, and with us and women in menopause, like my panic attacks for a while, they were on the rise. It was my diet. I love sweets. I bake. For me, it was my sweets. Because I can get in that kitchen and I can bake like 3 pounds of cookies, and I can but I was eating, I was baking, and then the next day I was like, woo, a panic attack was on the rise, and I wasn't going to stop it. Sunday mornings as I'm heading to church, I have a cup of coffee. What have I put in my coffee? It's not black. I have sugar, I have cream, and all that stuff was like trigger points. Here we go. I throw, as my grandma would say, put a piece of mint in my mouth, have it on I would have panic attacks in the middle of bishop preaching. I'd miss the whole service because I'm in the bathroom trying to calm myself down. So it was those things like that. But to know what triggers us is one of the major things, and then to use a psychotherapist or to speak to a nurse to get that assistance that we need.
How do you know if it's really a panic attack or if it's just a tantrum? My 4-year-old blow up. Anybody can answer that question?
Oh, I would love to answer that question because I have a 6-year-old at home and I have a 13-year-old, and the 13-year-old is kind of acting like the 6-year-old. So how do we know it's anxiety or a tantrum? Okay, you have to pay attention to how you feel as mom. So and I'm going to expand on that a little bit because you're like, what? That didn't answer anything. Thanks a lot. If you feel like you are being forced to do something, okay, that's a power and control struggle. Okay, tantrums are basically, it's the kid flips their lid. Okay, adults do it too. Adults have adult tantrums when they don't get their way. Remember, the trigger has to be unpleasant, avoidable, unfair. You have to feel powerless, and it has to be goal blocking. Same thing with the kid. A kid has a tantrum. Say they're in the store. They say, I want this cookie. I want it now. I want this cookie. And you say, no, you're not going to get a cookie because we're going to eat dinner. And then they go into their fit. So basically, their amygdala is driving their bus. They're so heightened and so flooded that it's just like having a panic attack. And so the only thing that will help in that moment is to let them ride it out. Okay? Because anxiety is just like anger. I mean, we need it. If we didn't have anxiety, we'd be falling off cliffs. We'd be listening to our GPS. Mine is in cahoots with like Siri, and they're trying to kill me. I swear. Take a left off this bridge. No! I hope that answered your question.
I have a question.
As related to the component spiritually though as well, by concerning relationship to people who are believers and the suicidal things that are going, and noticing more and more even in people in leadership. So what do you see related to how that can be, and how not to Christianize it, but to make it practical, but also giving that balance? Because we are spiritual beings as well. And as Christians, we don't get over this whole thing. I'm very concerned that people feel that this is their way out. I'm hurting, here I go, and like I said, dealing with grief ministry. I'm hurting, and now God will just understand.
Right.
I just do away with myself. That's a big concern.
I think that we have to start opening up the conversation. That's one of the things. This past week was crazy. We had someone that very prominent in the mental health world that died by suicide. We had a pastor who died by suicide this week. In our church alone, we've had some children go off to college and die by suicide. So our pastor in our church is located at 38th in Indiana. One of the things he said is we will have a mental health facility in this church. And it is not just for the people here, it's for the community to open up that conversation about it. And I don't know that I have your answer to what you're asking, to the exact question, but I want is to begin to open up into the dialogue. Allow the dialogue to begin to take place. She may have a better...
For many, many years, there's a stigma over mental health in the church. And if we take the crazy out of mental health in the church and open it up, and pastors begin to speak about it, and leaders begin to speak about it, we can save lives. There are so many other health issues that have stigmas over them because we allow society to put stigma on it, and we need to be healthy and whole, as the Word of God says. So we have to stop allowing society and what they think about things to seep into the church, because God wants a whole church. And we have to stop putting stigmas over what we're already we're battling already. So stop allowing the stigma of mental health to prevent us from talking and having the conversations.
I have a question, and my question is to all of you on the panel, just talking about the church and the stigma and the taboo. Also with senior citizens, we have the Alzheimer's and the dementia and the bipolar. And we kind of shun them, we sit them in a corner and we just leave baby in the corner. And just recently, I just came aware of that there is a what's called a sundown Alzheimer's. And so I would like for all three of you to kind of just give us a little knowledge about that, speak on that for a few minutes.
With sundowning syndrome is when nighttime comes, everything, of course, you don't leave them in a dark room, basically. That's the biggest thing with older people, because shapes and forms begin to take on a life of its own for the elderly. Like, they don't recognize people, they don't recognize shapes, and it becomes scary for them, especially if they're ambulatory. If they live in a facility, crossing over a doorway may be different. They can fall, rugs. It's just all types of different things that happen with them. Their perception becomes different. Right now, we're dealing with a mother in our church. Right now, she has the perception, her proprioception, her balance, everything is off, and she's afraid to even leave her house. So we're ministering to her right now. We have got to not forget about our elderly people. Mothers, God called the aged because they're wise. Just because they have something going on with them physiologically, we can't leave them to themselves. So he called us because we're strong. So we have to have the strength to go and find them out. Dementia is organic. There's something going on with the brain where, if I get into it, it's neurotransmitters, it's things that are not connecting with, how can I explain this to make it simple? Where there is communication problems with different things, and it's not clicking. Memory, like my mother could tell me things about, because my mother had Alzheimer's, let me just say this, and she could tell us stuff in the past when she was talking, and she stopped talking altogether. Okay, so she could tell us stuff in the past, but her short-term memory was horrible. So short-term memory leaves. Then they stop altogether recognizing you, period. And then other body systems start shutting down. Okay, so it's a very progressive and debilitating disease. So I caution you, I implore you, please stay and stick with your elderly. Don't let Satan win. Don't let him win the battle. Don't push them off to the side. They're in need of your love. They're in need of your understanding. They're in need of your prayers. Stick with them.
Our homebound seniors, we have to make sure we check in on them. And we've had a couple of winters where when it was homebound, we picked up the phone and we called them. And we would say, like, hey, sister, whomever, like, how you doing? Like, do you need anything? Our pastor is very generational in our church, and so we don't allow our seniors to be forgotten on the prayer list, and we have teams who go out and make sure you do visits, that we keep up with them. I have a 77-year-old dad and a 75-year-old mom. Health it's a real blessing, because we should have lost them. We could have lost them some time ago. My mother's a breast cancer survivor, by God's grace. While she was going through her breast cancer, my dad had 2 strokes. And I was like, come on, God, seriously? You are funny. After we got her to a healing place, my dad had a heart attack, triple bypass. Dad is pretty healthy. Dad goes to the doctor. Him and his doctor are like best friends. But he still had these illnesses. So God was working through us while we dealt with these different things. But my dad's health had him to stop working financially. He does some volunteer work. One of the things that he does, and we have shared it with other seniors at our church, is through AARP, and he's paid for it. He goes into schools in the city and he tutors kindergartners. My dad is living for those kids. He had more supplies than the teacher had, and I said, Dad, don't go in that lady's room and run those kids. But to keep them actively involved, my dad has said things like, I feel useless. My dad is accustomed to being the head of our household. And I said, Dad, your inability to go out and work a physical job has not diminished your role as head of the household. Whether you bring finances into this home or not, you shall always be the head of our household. You will always be the provider. And now I'm capable of paying all my parents' bills, God's grace, one more time. I said, Dad, I'm never taking away your power. I'm never taking away your manhood. But you gave and you gave and you gave and you sacrificed. Sit back. Let me take care of you. So for our seniors, I think is to remind them of, we need you. I need your history. I need your guidance. You're my dad.
I just want to add. I didn't have a question. I just wanted to add something to what she was saying. They just had on Channel 5 the other day how the hospitals are hiring seniors to sit and hold the babies, some of the babies that are addicted, and then some that are in the nursery. Because, you know, nowadays we have them, we're out the next day, and we got to be back at work. But I just thought that was so sweet that I think it was through AARP also, that the seniors, instead of sitting at home doing nothing, they're in the hospitals holding these babies. I just thought that was sweet. The one question was, go ahead.
I have panic attacks, and I have seizures. Before I had the panic attacks, before I had the seizures, I had panic attacks. And it just started. And I've had tests done, you know, and they can understand why I'm having the seizures. So you think because I have the panic attacks, because maybe things that happened to me years ago is what's causing me to have the seizures?
I'm going to allow one of the doctors or the nurses to do that. I hear what you're saying, but I don't want to misinform.
Right.
Some people just have a low threshold.
It may be precipitating your seizures, the panic attacks. So my suggestion is to get counseling. But there may be something also organic going on with your body. Are you taking medication?
I'm on a Keppra.
Yeah.
And a blood pressure.
Okay.
So
So blood pressure too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Those two factors. Yeah. Definitely.
Some people just have a lower threshold for seizures, and you don't get them. Are you getting them later in life? Okay, and it could have been, so some of the things to think about, which people don't really realize, is that you're going to have like an aura beforehand. So, yeah, so you want to make sure that you've rested the night before. If you don't have sleep, that's going to increase the, the likelihood that you might have a seizure. If you haven't eaten, if you're just feeling not yourself, so that's the day that you say, okay, maybe I don't want to drive. Or I don't want to operate heavy machinery. Or like for me, it would be my smartphone. I can't operate that. But I wanted to just kind of piggyback off of Miss Karen with talking about the church and the stigma question, if we have a minute. My thing is always relating it back to, for example, if I was working with a kid who in my office, he says, I'm suicidal, and he's Christian, and or they're Catholic, and he's afraid to tell his mom. I said, look, your mom's a nurse. He said, I know, but I can't tell her that I'm suicidal. And I said, look, remember when you were running track in high school? He said, yeah. I said, what if you fell down in track because you had like an arrhythmia? Or you had something going on with your heart, right? Your mom wasn't there, but the ambulance came, they took you to the hospital, they set you up and they said, oh, there's something going wrong with the heart, and shortness of breath, blood pressure, whatever it is. Your mom comes, they tell her that. Is your mom gonna say, oh no, don't treat my kid? And he said, no, she's gonna get me treated. I said, exactly. I said, this is the same thing, just a different part of your body. And so sometimes I will tell people, I get a lot of religious people from all faiths come and see me. And I said, look, first of all, God put me and these women here for a reason, put all of us here for a reason. This was not my first career, so I kind of fell into it. And I work with trauma. And so why are we here? And it goes back to, the man on the roof with the flood. The police come, the emergency rescue boats come. He said, no, I'm God's going to save me, right? The flood gets up to the point where he's on the roof. Okay, then the helicopter people come on, we have to evacuate. No, God's going to save me. Of course, the man dies. And when he reaches heaven, the first thing he does is he yells at God and he says, why didn't you save me? And he said, you fool, I sent you. I sent you the police, the ambulance. I sent you a helicopter. Like, how much more help could I have done for you? And so we have to remind individuals that are suffering, that are, afraid of going to get help, thinking that they're going to be stigmatized, that they're going to be seen as less than. That's not true. If you had diabetes, would you not take insulin?
Amen. So let's give our guest panelists a hand. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? No. Can you hear me now? Okay. So let's give our guest panelists a hand one more time. Ladies, I hope and I pray that this has been a knowledgeable experience for you. I want Evangela to come up at this time before I close out, because what you have seen today was her vision. This is what God had given her. This year, our theme was all about focus on the family. And all the panelists that you see here, all of the gifts, she put those together. This booklet, all of the flyers that has been sent out, this was all her. And so I want to just take the time for us to just thank her, because God said, give honor to whom honor is due. So I just want to thank Evangela for working and putting all of this together. Also, in your booklets, ladies, we have, if you would like to join us on tomorrow, we will have our morning service right here at 10:30 a.m. We have Connect in Prayer, the first Monday of every month. All of this information is in your booklet. On November, we have 4 what we call sister-to-sister ministries a month. This is a sister-to-sister ministry. We have 4 sister-to-sister ministries a year. In November,